and welcome to a new GTK tutorial. Today we are going to continue with our GObject videos, and we are going to talk about something new. Before we move there, I want to tell you that I made some change, which means at this point we have the window, we have the grid, we have the button and the label. We put the label and the button inside the grid, and then we show the window. Nothing special, nothing's new. Or at least not until you understand something. So you see, we have nothing to remove and something. Anyway, I want to introduce you to some new functions today. These functions, GObject class list property, GObject get class, and GIsObject class, also GObject class type, the GObject class name, and of course you will going to see a relation between the GObject type name, which we already talked about it, and the GObject class name. You will see. Anyway, for this I prepared something for you, and I'm not going to talk too much about this function right now, because this function you find it and you find in a lot of widget playlist, and also in the GTK property playlist as well. I'm just explaining a little bit. It is a function which now, with the help of this function, we are basically printing the properties of every possible object. And as you can see, it takes an object, no matter which one. And then this function basically calls the GObject class list properties. We're going to check in a second. And of course, we need the GObject class list property needs the object, the GObject class of the object, and we get it with GObject get class, and so on. And once that we're done, if we call this function, we need. Of course, we cannot pass the button right now. It will not work because we said that should be an object, and we get an error passing one of the list object property from incompatible pointer type, wherever. So we need to cast it. We know now what's the story with this cast, and so on. So I'm going to cast the button just to see that it's working. And as you can see, our button has 55 properties. If we use now the window has a little bit more than 55 or something like that. What was, you see, we have 75, which works fine. Okay, now we are not interested about this part where we are basically printing the properties. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to comment out the print part from the function, and I'm going to cast to void the prop name, because let me check it to see that everything is fine and it works fine. Of course, we need to void count as well, and now basically it works fine and nothing will be printed, but I need this function. Okay, everything is okay. Now watch, the first thing which I'm going to do, let us check the GObject class list property. The GObject class list property, I think it was properties, yes, not property, whatever. Properties, it says gets an array of GParam spec for all properties class. So basically return the location of the length of the return array as well if we pass the add property, the number of the properties. So this is what this function does. It's saving in the GParam double pointer list property all informations about the properties which has the object, and once that the object once that we get this information, then you can print it. Of course, now we see that its first parameter says a GObject class, and we are going to make some changes to this function. So for this, I'm going to say GObject class, and I'm going to say class with K, and here we are going to change this one to class, and of course at this point we changed a little bit the way how it looks like. With the GObject get class function, GObject get class function, which is a macro, says gets the class structure associated with the GObject instance. So basically this is what this function does. We are getting the class structure from the object itself, no matter which object you are using, window, label, whatever. Okay, now watch the next thing, which is very interesting for you. The next function which I'm going to introduce you, or the next thing which I'm going to introduce you, will be the GObject GIsObject class. GIsObject class right here. The macro says checks whether the class is a valid GObject class structure of the type GType object or derivative. So basically, if we call this one right now, and we say, after we create the class right here, if GIsObject class, and we pass the class, it should work. Now if I say now just a print, let's say true, not too much information right now, we are not interested about too much information, it should print now true. Okay, class with 2 S, and now it should print true for us, which is kind of true. Yes. Okay, which means that what we have here, it is indeed a class. Now, because it's working, let me introduce you to the next function, which is the GObject class type, and the next one, GObject class name. Those define those macros. The first one was let us get the type first, and its name was GObject class type. GObject class type right here. It says gets the type ID of the class structure. So let us get it. And for this, we are going to say here inside GType, let's say class type, and we are going to say now here that we need the type of the class. So we need to pass the class, of course. And the next thing which we need to call the next one, the GObject class name, which says GObject class name right here says return the name of the class structure. Class, a valid GObject, so type name of the class. The string, you see, the string is owned by the type system and should not be freed. So we know that it's a string because we know that this one a string it is, and we know we don't really need to free it or something. Then we are free to say const gchar const, and then we can safely call this function GObject class name, and of course we are going to pass the class again. And now, because we have the name and the class, the type, oh, I forgot the name here, of course, class name. Okay, let me indent a little bit the code. Okay, now we have the class name and the class type. Because we have them both, now we can print them. It will be a little bit strange because of the type, but it is not important about to play about the G types, and so this is another story. So I'm just going to say the name of the class is %s, and of course class name, and I'm going to make a copy of it, and I said the type of the class, it is class type. And because the G type it is an unsigned long, we don't need to know right now. I just want to see if it's working. This is the thing which is important for me now. And as you can see, it says the name of the class is GTK label, and of course the type is long number, whatever. We got the type, we got the name. Important for us is that we know how to get the type of a class, and we know how to get the name of the class. Now, the last thing, the GObject type name, which I was introducing you at, I think in the first video, together with the GTK widget get name. Now, let me show you something. The GObject type name, if you call this function, right here, let's say G print, and say the object name is %s, and we call the GObject type name on the object. Now you will see something which should match and which should make you better understand about what I was talking about in the first place. You see, the name of the class is GTK label, the object name is GTK label, and if you call, of course, if you call the GTK widget get name on the object, and I'm going to set the widget name is this time. Yes, of course, because we need to cast the object to a GTK widget, which is kind of strange, but we need it as a widget. Even if it is an object, it's still a widget. And at this point, you see we have a GTK label, GTK label, and GTK label. And watch now what happens if we set a name. So I'm going basically to copy this call right here and change the get with set on the object. So we are setting in a name, a new name. I'm going to say new name, whatever. So I just gave it a new name. Once that I gave it a new name, let us check what's going to return: the class name, the object name, and the widget name. As you can see, like I already told you in the first video, the widget name will be the new name, because this is what this function does. You change only the widget name and not the object name, and the object name and the class, the name of the class, it will be still the same, which is the GTK label. So basically this is the way how you handle these calls and these macros. What did we learn so far? Let's see. I'm going to remove this one. There are quite many, isn't it? If we check here, we have some functions which we were using. Anyway, the other things which, until we move on, because with the properties which will get clear, the next thing, the install properties, find properties, and whatever, I think override property I use as well. We have no interface so to check, but all these things, or at least an idea about how these functions are working, I strongly suggest you to go, if you didn't was already, to GTK property playlist to see how you install or find a property or more properties, whatever. You saw how you list the properties, but you can also find a property, or you can install a property as well, whatever. The thing is that the installing property and properties and all those information, you get them from the GTK property playlist. So that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you like it, please subscribe, share with your friends and neighbors, and until next time, see you guys.